The Citizen Mike Show. News. Commentary. Interviews. Citizen Mike Show starts now.
Hey, welcome to the Citizen Mike Show. Thanks for tuning in. We do appreciate it. My name is Mike Brudzinski, and tonight we have Jesse Reynolds. He is a Democrat running for the Wallingford Town Council. He's a veteran on the show. Well, kind of. Jesse, welcome back to the Citizen Mike Show.
Thank you for having me. I'm very excited to be here.
I know you are. I can I can tell. So, as you viewers know, we've been featuring non-incumbent candidates to the town council this fall. We've already had Jamie Hine and Jeff Cohan and Christina Tata on the show, and with Jesse, that completes the programming for that, for the candidates for the town council. Before we get to chatting with Jesse, just go over the ground rules so everyone knows what they are. I sent each of the candidates topics, so I think it was back in August or beginning of September. All the candidates have the exact same topics, and we'll get into all of them with Jesse. And that way the candidates have had a chance to think about it, prepare, collect their thoughts, research, do whatever they want to do, but we get them at their most thoughtful, and that's the and that's the point of that. One of the ground rules was that I wanted to introduce the candidates with their words, and I asked each to send me a few sentences so I could read them, read the sentences that introduces Jesse. This is what he asked me to read. Here we go. Jesse Reynolds is a biostatistician and oversees clinical trial registration and results reporting compliance at Yale University. He is also an adjunct college professor. A permanent resident of Wallingford since 2000, Jesse is a married father of 2 children in the Wallingford public school system. Jesse has volunteered formally and informally in Wallingford organizations for the last 15 years, including leadership roles at the Wallingford Public Library and the Wallingford Youth Soccer League. You ready to get to it?
Sure.
So one of the topics was a topic of your choice, whatever you wanted to get into that would sort of reflect how you would handle your job as a town councilor if you're elected. What did you pick for a topic?
Well, I have a platform that's sort of laid out on my website, and
feel free to give the website.
Oh, it's jesseforcouncil.com.
You can pitch that, absolutely.
Jesse4council.com.
There you go. All right.
And but one of the things that I asked to talk about is about recreational sports. I view it as an important quality of life issue in the town, and as a volunteer in Wallingford Youth Soccer League, I think that we've experienced the same sort of issues with enrollment that other leagues have experienced with a decline in enrollment. And I'd like to use my visibility as a counselor to sort of bring this issue to light and to try to get everybody to the table to kind of come up with some solutions around that. So I could say perhaps add something to the agenda for the meeting to see if I could get representatives from the league to come and talk about it. But I have more ideas other than that.
But what's the goal? What are you trying to achieve?
Well, the ultimate goal is to increase participation in activities like sports, recreational sports, up through middle school.
So this would be like an awareness thing that you would...
Yeah, it would be an awareness, but it would also be like forming, an ad hoc commission of some sort, not necessarily proposing that, but basically trying to figure out what are the pain points of the leagues and what can we do that to utilize what we already have. For example, Park and Rec has an amazing infrastructure, but when you look at their catalog, it does come across as it's sort of siloed. Everybody kind of does their own thing, and I know operating the mite soccer division, we had to compete with all other sports, and nobody really ever paid mind to scheduling, for example.
So if you were on the town council, how would you try to address that, understanding that Park and Rec kind of controls the show?
Well, I think I would do it more in a sense where, because I'm not trying to tell somebody how to do their job. I'm not trying to tell anybody what to do per se, But I'm trying to get everybody in the room together to kind of talk it out and to figure out, are there ways that we could streamline services like universal background checks for volunteers, streamlining payment so not every league has to pay for their own credit card fees and things like that. Ways to kind of lower costs and also utilize the fields in ways that the leagues in the 21st century can actually use, and to accommodate things like lacrosse and football and all the other things that pop up, touch football. There's lots of activities out there, but they're all competing for the same kids.
Now, does this have any budget implications? Is it going to cost folks more money if
Well,
you're
what
able
I'm
to
envisioning,
implement this?
what I'm envisioning right now wouldn't cost folks any more money, but we already allocate money in the budget every year to the leagues, and I think the town should do that. But one of the questions we would have is, do you need more, and if so, how much? Or has your enrollment declined over the years, and what are the reasons why? And would more money help that, or is there something else that you might need? So it's not so much like, adding more money to fix a problem. It's trying to figure out what the problems are and seeing if we can address them before it costs anybody anything other than time.
What do you think the market is, the potential, if you're able to get this off the ground and call it a success? What does success look like for you?
Success would look like people having options year-round for their kids in low-pressure, fun, recreational sports activities. Not competitive, not pay-to-play premier, but, sort of like what we had when I lived in Ann Arbor, Michigan. Everything was run through the Park and Rec and the schools. So each school had their own team. It was mixed grades. It was mixed gender. And it was for fun. Everybody got a T-shirt. Kids would show up on Saturdays. Parents would hang around, drink coffee if it was cold, and it was a nice thing. And it got kids out running. It got them off the couch, got them off of screens. Well, it would do that. Back then, we didn't have those things.
Right. Anything else before we move on to the next topic?
No, again, people, if they want to reach out and find out more, I'd be happy to talk about it. And, folks who know me from the soccer league, I've spoken with the president as well as folks who are involved. They know, that I'm out here talking about it. So, but it's important to me because it's about kids. It's about kids in middle school having something to do. And right now there's not a lot for them to do because we don't have enough participation.
All right, let's pivot to another topic that we sent you. Economic development seems to have a high profile position this year in the mayoral campaigns. Yet the Wallingford Town Council just kind of has a limited role in that. But I'm asking all the candidates running for council, how do you view that issue of economic development? If you're on the council, how would you have an impact? How would things change if you were on the council? Why don't you tackle that?
Well, so there's two things. The first being that I don't necessarily view economic development in the way that it's often talked about, because usually what people talk about is actually economic growth. And economic growth is actually a component of economic development. Economic development incorporates quality of life, public health, and all the other aspects of improving the overall economic conditions in a town. People like to focus on, how many, new businesses opened and things like that. And those are all important metrics. But the first thing is, I view economic development as, bigger than just economic growth. As a counselor, you're right. We don't have a lot of say in, what gets done. But, for example, in ordinances, we do have a say in that. If you go to New Haven and you go to their downtown restaurants, if you're thinking about how would we grow the lower downtown, rather than have all of the seating on the actual sidewalks, what they do is they'll take up a parking space or two and build a deck so that you can walk clear across the sidewalk, not impede, and you can let people eat there. That would be an option for businesses to open up, eating outdoors, and it would, that's something that we could actually do through an ordinance. Right now, if you read the ordinance on outdoor dining, it's only on certain streets and it's, within certain range of the front door and all. So that's a small thing that you could do to help downtown restaurants, to kind of expand their seating outdoors, which people like.
Anything else that specific that you had in mind for if you were on the council?
Well, I would continue to push for more focus on transit-oriented development.
What does that exactly mean? I hear that kicked around a lot.
Yeah, well, it's a buzzword.
I
right?
try to pay attention as close as anybody, but I really don't know how that differs from other kinds of stuff.
Well, in European places, for example, they often focus on sort of like rail-based travel as a center of where you want to develop your your downtown around. And right now, we have a gift. We have a brand new train station that's sitting right, not in the middle of lower downtown, but it's close enough to it where you can walk to there if you live there. And so what I would be in favor of are similar to things that, Jamie had talked about when he was on your show. I would be interested in using some town money to maybe buy up properties that come available in that area with the hopes of packaging them for someone to develop a larger scale project. But I also looked in the Planning of Conservation and Development report, and there was also suggestions about what you might do with multifamily homes and things. And I think there's other stuff that we could do to encourage either refurbing houses or rebuilding houses and that sort of thing.
Well, is that a zoning issue more than a town council issue?
Yeah, it is. But I mean, part of it would come through what you call the bully pulpit, where these are the things that I'm going to see. I'm not going to vote for this unless I see this attached to it, or ask the questions about that. But yeah, I mean, it's look, everybody has to be involved. Inland wetlands, planning, zoning, all of these things have to come into play. To kind of make it all happen. But, I really think that it's something that in the next couple of years we could really focus on, whether it be financially or if it's just simply talking about it more, to foster that cause.
So how big a deal is this in that, is this one of the top 3 challenges facing the town? Does anyone really care except around election time?
Well, if you go back and listen to me from like 12 years ago when I ran, I said the biggest problem this town was facing, and I was called vanilla for saying it, is that our aging population. And our aging population.
And you're
right
looking
now,
at me, and you're looking at me
Well,
when you say that.
I
All right,
can't-
go ahead, Jesse. We
well,
won't
so-
kick you off. No,
right.
we won't cut your mic, but go
So
ahead.
again, if you go into the Planning
never
of
thought I was the
Conservation
problem.
and Development
Yeah.
report, and you look at the demographics of how they changed over a 10-year period, you'll see that like the distribution of our population is moving further and further upward into the 55, 65, 75 age range.
And that's a problem because?
It's a problem because in 20 years, when I'm in my 60s, we're going to have a tax burden that's going to be shouldered by an even older population, right? Because people stay alive longer now, thank God, but also we are going to be the ones shouldering the tax burden, at least on the residential side, unless we can get more younger people, and I don't mean more younger, I mean more younger people to move
larger
here.
population.
A larger population
Yes.
of young people
Okay.
to shoulder that tax burden. But to do that, we have to think in ways that they like. They don't need to own cars. They don't want to own homes. They would rather rent. They would rather take public transportation. They would rather use their money for other things. So we need to think in ways that
Apartments for lower downtown. Is that what
Yeah,
you're?
sure.
More apartments,
Yep.
bigger buildings?
I don't necessarily, well, mixed use buildings where we can, promoting things like, the Parker Place area is amazing. But, I don't think you can do something with that large scale because we won't have parcels that big. But, even if it's incentives to improve homes or to make accommodations in multifamily homes to bring them up to, a more desirable.
Okay, so are there funding implications on this? You mentioned sort of
Well,
at
if
the
we buy
top.
property, that's
so-
funding. But we also have a large rainy day fund.
So-
and in the future, the state may start looking to places like Wallingford with their large rainy day fund to supplement other things, especially if they start spreading education money around or other things.
So how deep do you go into the rainy day fund to buy up properties?
Well, we can't spend all of it. We have to maintain a certain amount for our bond rating. You have to have a certain amount. But we purchased the brothers' property, and we're turning that for now into a parking lot. Things of that scale, if they come across every so often, I don't see that as it's a large expenditure, but I don't think it's a back-breaking expenditure. That building on the corner of Center Street and Route 5 there, the big white building, that building's for sale with the building next to it, but it's like $1 million. So I don't know.
I hear that's an investment.
That could be an investment, but I don't know if anybody would want to invest in that given the conditions of the building, the location of the building, the parking that exists behind it. So, maybe there would be ways to, that's a state road. Is there anything that the state might have that we could potentially tap
buying
into?
it and tearing it down?
Well, if we buy it and tear it down, that may be of some use, but of what? It's in a precarious position. I think if you wanted to use it and, recut the street to incorporate a bus turnaround, or if you wanted to make a greater access to our municipal parking out back, it could be for that. But that's a large expenditure for something like that.
One of the issues that has come up in this campaign is increasing the budget for the Economic Development Commission and staff. That puts pressure on the mill rate. Do you subscribe to that view, to increase the budget for the economic development staff?
So I would be in favor of increasing our budget for economic development, but I would have to really examine what the intent of the money is. I think that, we, through the Economic Development Commission, which is volunteer-based, in addition to the paid people that we have, I think that that's a vital asset that our town has, where we have local people who understand local issues. But I also think that we could probably afford, to a certain extent, to spend a little bit more money on some more personnel to have a greater flexibility in what they're able to get out of out of economic development. But as I said before, we focus a lot on economic growth, but we don't really talk a lot about what economic development as a whole means. And so having a full-time person would probably be a benefit, but it would have to translate into other areas that are probably not even covered by what we pay.
So
in that.
So I want to pin you down on this. So imagine you're on the council and the issue comes up. Typically it'd be budget workshops.
Sure.
That'd be where it comes up. And, on that agenda is Economic Development Commission along with 4 or 5 other departments. Mm-hmm. And so take it from there. What's your approach? The mayor submitted his budget and it sort of tracks prior budgets.
Well, is it Mayor Dickinson or is it Mayor Liu?
Well, take it both ways.
All right. So if it's Mayor Dickinson's budget and I'm in the council minority, then probably whatever I have to say won't really matter all that much. If it's Mayor Liu's council and I'm in the majority, then I think that I probably would be. I would question whatever is being proposed, doing my due diligence as a steward for the budget. But at the same time, I would be in favor of putting some more targeted money into that area. So I think if it were me with the mayor and being in the minority, I would ask, I would ask the department itself, are there things that you do without, or could you use some more help? I mean, I think you tell me that they're going to say no, but I mean, I would at least ask the questions to see if there's more that's needed.
Well, I would say this, now that you've provoked me into a contribution. Sure. Here. Sometimes you have to put up the good fight and you lose 1 or 2 years in a row, and then finally it grabs. Maybe it's the 3rd year or the 4th year, and sometimes it's incremental. And maybe there's a little more, not as much as you want in the way of money. And so just by putting up the good fight, if you have your ducks in a row, if your research is there, if
Sure.
you have a good case to make, it becomes a bully pulpit, and with any luck, you get in the paper and you begin to get public opinion on your side, and then eventually things change. So just being in the minority, it creates a greater opportunity for you to try that.
Okay.
All
right.
Got a little preachy here, but
sure, that's fair. It would probably be enormously frustrating, but that's
absolutely
fair.
It is.
Oh yeah, But
Yeah.
I think I want to go on record as saying I don't think anybody should lose their job. I don't think we should replace anybody. I just think that we could probably afford to put a little bit more money into it to get a little bit more bang for our buck.
Okay.
And I think that goes into other areas too, besides, like I said, attracting businesses to come here. That's fine and well, but we need people to move here too. We don't need just businesses. We need people.
Should we move on to schools?
Sure.
Is our next topic. Things have happened since I sent out those topics to you guys back in the late summer. We've learned that the Board of Education has put the school renovation project on pause while it gets more information from the state, and apparently there's some other facilities study, a more in-depth study. So we don't know the timing of this, but based on what we do know so far, what's been your reaction to, impression of the plans put forth so far by the Board of Ed?
Well, I've informally talked with my dad, who's on the Board of Education.
Oh, my goodness. I forgot that. Really. Go ahead, though.
But he,
Good disclaimer.
Yeah,
I'm glad
informally,
you put that in there.
but in his defense, he's very impartial. He just kind of gives his impressions of things. But I don't have any insider information. I don't think
Okay.
that there really is any.
Yep.
I want the best school system for Wallingford's children, because frankly, my son's a senior, my older boy's a senior, my younger boy is going to be.
Well, everyone does. I mean,
Right.
the issue is, does that mean you got to spend $117 million or more?
Well, see, and I don't know, because my problem with the three choices was that, we get the steady as you go $17 million strategic plan, and then you jump to $100+ million in either scenario, whether it's 90 something that we shoulder or 117 that we shoulder. And then you got to rely on the state to come in and give their money. And if we don't start this thing for a few years, who knows under the current administration if there's even going to be money to use. So I wonder why there isn't anything in between. But honestly, I would say that if we're going to do something, then we're probably going to have to rebuild the schools, because if that's what a consultant is saying, now granted they get paid for their wares, but
Well, let me interrupt you, because I want to. They didn't say that yet.
right.
Okay, take it from there.
Sure. I'm saying, but the three plans we get is one high school, which would be at Lyman Hall, which is crammed into the corner of town, not centrally located. It would be a nightmare to get all the buses there.
I gather you're not in favor.
I don't think, well, actually, I am in favor of one high school, but it can't be there, because logistically, it wouldn't be fair to everybody in Yalesville and on the other side of town, getting over the train tracks. Plus, I want more trains to come. If I want more trains to come through town, then we're going to have to get I mean, how frustrating people would want to. People would be so mad at me.
So there's more
there's
trains to come. All right,
I
go
do.
ahead.
I want more trains to come through town because we need more commuter rail traffic. So the other option is strategic plan, or we renovate the two middle schools and the two high schools. And to me, that's two polar opposite choices. There's so you either go with what we have or we rebuild everything. And I can't figure out why there's not anything in between.
Well, if you could craft your own remedy, because with this bully pulpit that we're talking about, you can issue a press release at any time or put it on the agenda. I mean, you have a lot of ways you could approach it. What are you looking for? I'm trying to get the heart of Jesse Reynolds here.
Okay, so I work with data. I'm a biostatistician, which means I work with medical related data, but I've also worked with survey data. And I looked at the survey that people completed. And for people who don't think that there were a lot of people who completed the survey, 2,000 respondents is a lot. That's a fair representation of the community. It's 5%. That's a lot. That being said, the people that chose the more expensive plans, the reason that they gave for choosing those over the strategic plan, the steady as you go, is primarily the condition of the buildings. And so as a parent of a student at Lyman Hall School, I think that the school is run very well. I think the programs are great. But if you walk into the front door and then use the restroom right by the auditorium there, my father, this is no insider Board of Ed information, he says those bathrooms are the exact same as they were when he went there in 1970. So there are needed renovations that haven't taken place. And so when people say, well, your choice is what we're going to do already, which is part of our strategic plan, or hundreds of millions of dollars, well, they're not going to choose the one that says, well, the bathrooms aren't repaired, the stalls are rusty in the boys' room. I mean, it's obvious that these, and so if you're relying on the town to maintain buildings that they're not fully maintaining, or you get the Cadillac deal, people are choosing the Cadillac because they have no faith in the prior. Not that, again, I'm not trying to insinuate people don't do their jobs, but I don't think they're not putting enough money into the issues that they have. All
right, so I'm trying to bottom line this as to where you stand here. If you could again craft your own remedy, it sounds like the 15 to 20 million I think you're saying,
is inadequate.
Inadequate.
It's inadequate.
The $117 million
Is a lot of money.
Is too much? Did you go so far as to say it's too much?
Well, I don't know what those things cost, so that's part of it. You know, I would, as a counselor, I would want some specifics as to how all of this money is going to translate into making Wallingford more attractive to people to bring their kids for education.
Oh, I
here.
can tell you that.
Well, here's one thing. We tout Wallingford for all the things, lower electric rates, everything. Everything's great, great, great. Until we get to our schools, and then we say good. We don't say great, we say good. And the reason why we say...
sounds like you're in a rebuild for schools mode, whatever the price. That's what I'm trying to pull
Not
teeth
whatever
here.
the price, no. No, I don't know. I wouldn't be in favor of a blank check, and I wouldn't be in favor of throwing a lot of money at schools without any tie-in as to how it's going to actually improve the education of our kids.
Oh, you'll never get that.
No.
You'll never get that.
Well, but again, I mean...
I bet you there's no data anywhere at all that says... a shiny new classroom gives better scholastic achievement. I bet that isn't there. I mean, I bet it's teachers, it's socioeconomic profile of the town. I mean,
if you want to make a case that teachers would be happier to be at work in a newer building or things like that, I guess. But again, here's the other thing too, and this is the biggest one. What is the cost of maintaining these buildings long term if we just keep going the way we're going? Like if it's $117 million right now, in 20 years, how much is it going to cost? It could be twice that. It could be it could be twice that. Plus, we have to adhere to a whole new set of codes that we're not even aware of anymore. I mean, there could be all kinds of things. So, if the issue needs to be addressed now, we have to address it in the way that makes the most sense. And then I'll listen to how much it costs. But you have to convince me that it makes sense first before I even consider how much the money would be.
Let's change the subject.
Okay.
Community pool. One of the topics I like. There's been some developments since that we sent out the topics. It looks like we know the trajectory of the pool. It looks like they're designing an 8,000 square foot pool with some amenities. But what is your reaction to how things are proceeding so far? And if you were on the council back when this was discussed, what would have been different?
I think I would have pushed harder to understand how West Hartford is bigger than us. It's 60-some thousand to our 40-some thousand. But they have 4 pools, and we have 1.
That wasn't mentioned, was it?
And their biggest pool would be bigger than the 8,000 square foot one. I think their second biggest pool is 8,000 square feet. So why do they have 4 pools, and we only have 1, and 8,000 square feet seems to make sense?
I think you got a point in mind. What's your...
Well, my point is,
a little skeptical. I'm not sure. You're a little skeptical.
Watching it from afar, and I read through the plans that they presented, and it looks great in terms of what they put on paper. But I feel like there was already a number in mind. I feel like there was at some point there was a number floated that said we really aren't going to go higher than this, or we won't go higher than this, but we know it's really going to cost this much in the end. And by the way that plan reads, it seems like they were trying to hover around $5 million and then go up with soft costs and things like that.
So I'm going to double down on my question, but I'm going to paint a hypothetical. This is based on a true story, I guess. It's sort of based on a story that's based on a true story. So let's suppose hypothetically that the mayor decided, as he has every right to do, that he's not going to tolerate anything above $6 million. In his his role as mayor, he can veto it. He can do whatever he needs to do. But in his office, behind closed doors, he said, don't come back with a $6 million plus pool because it ain't going to fly. And everyone now has their marching orders, and whatever pool size or amenities are designed have to fit in that. Of course, no one's admitting that, but I think the circumstantial evidence points in that direction. I think it's very persuasive circumstantial evidence. That's what happened. I think most people maybe there's some naive counselors up there, I don't know, but I think most counselors kind of thought that that was happening. Now, you're on the council. You see this unfolding. You have your suspicions that this is what happened. Take it away. What might you do? What would you have done?
All right. So my first question would be, why aren't we doing the parking lot? Now, you're going to build a whole new park and a whole new pool, and you're going to build all of these, little nooks and things. I mean, even in the smaller plan, splash pad, all that stuff, and it all looks great. But you leave out repaving the parking lot. That to me screams that someone was trying to figure out a way to get into the wheelhouse of someone's suggested cost. And
it adds to the circumstantial evidence that there's a top line.
There's a there there.
There's a there there, yeah.
But at the same time, though, like why wouldn't that be at the forefront? I mean, if you think about what it's going to take to turn that place into what it's going to do, you're going to have trucks going in and out of there and everything else, and then you're not going to repave the existing parking lot, which was $200,000. To me, it came across as that they were trying to deliberately omit things, like going from 12 trees to 52 trees.
Would you have any objection to the 8,000 square foot pool, or would you rather have seen a larger pool? Because you started out by talking about West Hartford.
Well, I mean,
for more money.
I was looking at the pictures today, and I don't want to necessarily say that it's going to be small, but I think it's going to be smaller than people realize, because when you have that zero depth walk-in, by the time you get to waist high water, unless there's a drop off, like when you're at the beach or something,
you're at the other end,
right? And if you're going to have a little, it's great. No, it's got a slide and it's really great. It's going to be better than what's there now, but I don't think that it's necessarily I don't think 8,000 square feet is the required size for a town of our size. I think that was a compromise.
So, do we put you down for 9,000 square feet?
Well, I'd have to see what it looks like.
Well,
or what it costs.
Well, I mean, what they're saying is we designed an 8,000 square foot pool because we were told that's the budget, and I think the quote was somehow the number got out there and it stuck.
Yeah. Well,
I think sort of drop dead laughable, but.
Well, I think that's unfortunate, but the other thing too is if we go back to what I was saying, like that pool's ideal for usage of a town our size based on the people that come here. But if my plan, right, if my plan to attract young people works, then you would see that pool filled, and then what? Is it going to be too small then?
I'm trying to find out. I mean, are you in for a 9,000 square foot pool and you get in a price and it's not it's maybe $6.75 million? Is that okay?
At that point, I would have to defer to an expert based on pools because I don't know anything about pools. But I would have to say,
But they're already compromised. They already justified 8,000 square feet because that was the budget.
Well, of course, they justified it. I would like to, similar to how they built it all out with this many trees. Now we put in a beach volleyball course or sand volleyball course and all these other things. You could actually hypothetically say, well, if we go this much further on either side, it would cost this much. I think that's a fair ask. Yeah. I mean, granted, it's the largest pool, in the universe or something. Well, it's the 40,000 square feet, is larger than any pool,
Yeah.
But it was originally a body of water that they paved and turned into a pool. So of course you're not going to do that, but at the same time, it has to be feasible. The extra 2 lanes on the lap, I don't really have an issue with. I don't think that I don't think we necessarily need more lap lanes, but I think I'd like to see what it really looks like with zero depth and think about how many people you're actually going to fit in there.
Well, it looks like that ship has sailed and But
that's what I would have asked back then.
Okay. Let's make that the final word because we are out of time. Thanks for coming on the Citizen Mike Show, and good luck on the campaign trail, and hope to see you back.
Thank you.
All right.
Glad to come back.
And thank you, dear listeners, for watching the Citizen Mike Show. We're here on Wednesday nights. It's up on YouTube probably around Thursday or maybe Friday at the latest. So you can get to YouTube, search on the YouTube search bar there, Citizen Mike Wallingford channel, or get in touch with me by email. Let me know you want a link emailed directly to you. I will do that. And the show is also broadcast on WPAA on Thursday, Fridays, Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesdays at 9. And as we've been saying for 9 years or so, if it's 9 at night, it's Citizen Mike. Good night, everybody.